So a couple months ago, I was walking through a gallery show downtown in Chelsea, and I was reading the printed flyer about the artist. He was a painter. And a question was teed up asking the guy why he paints. And he gave one of those predictable answers, something to the effect that to paint was to live, that for him, painting was breathing, that sort of thing. So I was thinking that a better question to have asked the guy would have been, why do you continue to paint when there's so little satisfaction when the work's done? It's actually pretty common for artists at the end of a creative cycle to sense a letdown, almost a depression. And audiences, they rarely grasp the intent of what you're doing, so don't look there for gratification. And even those superficial paybacks like money, popularity, fame, etc., the stuff that often lures young people towards the arts in the first place, even if those things ever arrive, and they rarely do, they usually do more harm than good. So hey, why keep doing it? Why keep painting? Why keep writing songs? Why keep recording music? Why keep making albums? Over the years, I think I came up with an answer to that.
3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. little bit funky.
And they can get a little cranky. I'll try not to be too cranky. But the music scene in New York City over 30 years ago when I came here was almost unrecognizable compared to what it is now. There were just dozens and dozens of live music clubs with national acts going to those clubs. There were just independent studios, small mom and pop studios on every other block in Manhattan. And the reason why I came to New York City, the primary reason was to go to the live music clubs and hear all these acts that I wanted to go listen to live. So it was like a paradise. You'd open up the back of the Village Voice and you'd see like 12 pages of club listings of great bands that you always wanted to see, and they'd be playing live 10 blocks away. So I used to hang around at those clubs for years. And at the time, New York City, in 80s and 90s, the live music scene was so vibrant and was so diversified. Punk rock was still happening, the tail end of it was still happening down on the Lower East Side and on the Bowery. But there was a real vibrant roots rock Americana scene that doesn't even exist here anymore in New York, where you'd get roots rock bands, rockabilly bands, heavy duty blues bands, and really crafty songwriting going on. And you could almost go out every night and hear something really cool. And so that was kind of the scene that I was coming here for, and that I kind of learned to live in and organically create music in. So we started playing in almost all those clubs that I used to go listen to when I would go to clubs in New York, all of them, all those roots rock clubs, Lone Star, Tramps, Chicago Blues, Manny's Car Wash. These places were all, they were alive, and I had seen bands there so many times. Eventually we ended up playing all those clubs, and we played them regularly, some of them. We had regular gigs. And eventually I got a record deal. Yeah, something going on downtown. It was always one of my focused intents when we started was we're going to have a band, and we're going to have a band that actually interacts as a band and knows each other musically. We were trying to find a sound that sounded like we were together group. Musicians can tell, they go, those guys play together. They're not just dudes who were jamming or who looked at the material for the first time yesterday and learned the songs. So that was sort of the ambition of what we were doing. My idea from the get-go was to write songs that had sharp, crafted lyrics, words that snapped the listener to attention. A lot of the song lyrics I'd heard on the radio in my early years were lazy, perfunctory things. Even with many of the bands that I liked as a kid, the groove could be great, but the verse and the chorus were so-so. It seemed to me that to anybody who was listening hard, a good deal of contemporary music was a bit dull-witted. Early on, I was focused on songwriters whose work was a cut above. People like Chuck Berry, Hank Williams, Willie Dixon, Doc Pomus was a favorite, Robert Johnson, and contemporary guys like Dylan, John Prine, Randy Newman, Springsteen, you know the names. People like Elvis Costello, Nick Lowe, Tom Waits, Joni Mitchell, Townes Van Zandt. Those were the cats I was really interested in. And it was plain that if you wanted to form a band that mattered, that band was going to have good songs, original songs that you could carry into a room and play for smart artists like them and say, hey, you really should hear this.
I come from a long line of bar stool companions. Tell your story, man, I got one for you. Well, life's too short for silence. I may be right, I may be wrong, but no story ever fell on deaf ears that had a bottle to help it along. I come from a long line, yes drinks are all me.
Every new generation in the U.S. includes a small subset of kids who want out of the suburban middle class that's laid out in front of them. Kids who specifically want to move to New York City, to live there and be part of one creative scene or another. By the age of 22, I had bachelor's degrees in electrical engineering, in computer science, and in English. But there were really only two ideas in my head at that time. One, I was going to continue to play guitar, and two, I was moving to Manhattan. A secondary interest was to travel, and I did hitchhike alone through Europe for the better part of a year, and I lived in Paris for several months. But I eventually came back to New York City, again living in a series of third-rate apartments. I was very focused on music, on making music, and doing whatever I had to do on the side to make a living. For a while I was auditioning with bands and playing with bands, and they were bands which I really didn't like very much for the most part. Eventually I decided to pull together my own thing. And we got gigs, started playing out, and as you might imagine, most of the clubs were beer-soaked dives, dumps really. A lot of those in New York City back in those days. Back then, my overriding idea was to play as many dates as you can. And we did. We always playing out at least once or twice a week in Manhattan, sometimes in Brooklyn. And it was a lot of hustling. My only rule was that I refused to play for free or for next to nothing. I simply believed that if you wanted me to play, you had to pay us something, even if it was just cab fare. It was like indentured servitude. We got paid next to nothing. And the club managers acted like they were doing you a favor. It actually cost me tens of thousands to keep the band working. But you did it because you wanted to play, and you wanted to learn. You never really learn how to play your instrument, professionally I mean, until you regularly perform 2 or 3 sets a night to an empty house, or in front of drunken people who were throwing crap at you on stage.
It was the summer of 2001, and I was looking through the classified ads in the Village Voice, and that's where I found the ad for Paul Mark and the Van Dorens, bass player wanted for a roots rock blues trio. It was a fun ad, you know, it talked about great music, long road trips, and bad food. But what really grabbed my attention was the fact that he added, must know how to shuffle and play swing, you know, make it swing. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted to do, you know. We're all on the same, riding the same wavelength, you know. We're all at that area of just loving the music and having a passion for this kind of music. And I think we all do that. I think it all comes out in our playing, and especially more so magnifies when we're all doing it together. So it takes it up to that level now, you know.
James is one of the few musicians I know who was actually born and grew up in New York City. There's a legitimacy about him. The music world, it's rife with unprofessionalism and temperamental craziness. And then there's James, the guy who always shows up calm and ready, always with good music ideas, always well practiced, speaks up only when it's important. You see it in the eyes of engineers in the studio and in the barflies in the clubs. People want to know more about James.
These times of change take long.
Our first record, which was called Go Big or Go Home, was cut in Memphis, and the producer was Jim Gaines, the record company that hooked us up with him. He became our first real music friend, one of many in Memphis. He had worked with people like Steve Cropper and Albert King, and he had done a bunch of work with Carlos Santana. Just before our record, he had done Stevie Ray's In-Step record. So we were pretty jazzed to be working with this guy. It was with Jim that we learned how to record professionally and how to work in a major league, world-class recording studio. It's a lot different working in a big recording studio than it is sitting in your bedroom twiddling with knobs and one microphone. We again worked with Jim Gaines on our second record because we loved working with him. That record was called Metropolitan Swamp. And that record was recorded at Ardent Studios in Memphis on Madison Avenue there. It was on Metropolitan Swamp that Jim Gaines introduced us to Jeff Powell, who went on to have a long history with Paul Mark and the Van Dorens. Jeff began his career as an engineer, an audio engineer in Memphis, and he had some heavyweight mentors. He worked for a long time with Tom Dowd, and he worked with John Hampton. Jeff worked his way up from assistant engineer to a producer in his own right, and then later went on to a career as a star in the very specialized world of vinyl mastering. During those weeks working on Metropolitan Swamp, it became apparent to me that Jeff Powell, who was a great guy to work with personally, his skill set was a perfect complement to mine. I was involved in the music sound of the band, the rehearsing, the songwriting, the performance. I knew what I wanted the band to sound like. Jeff knew how to run a session. He knew how to mic an amp. He knew how to mic a drum set properly. He knew how to cable instruments properly. He knew how to run a 24-track tape recorder. He knew how to do overdubs. He knew how to handle multiple personalities in the room. Over the years, I learned more from Jeff Powell and from his engineering assistant, terrific guy, Lucas Peterson. I learned more from those cats about making records than anybody I knew in the industry. The last time I checked, I believe Jeff and I have worked on 7 full-length album recording projects together. 7 projects, that's a long partnership in the very transient music industry that we work in. Even today, when I'm thinking about doing a new project, the first phone call I make is to Memphis, to Jeff Powell, to say, hey, what's your availability? And even when we're not working on a project, we have our periodic phone calls regularly, the way friends do. If nothing else, then to retell the old dad jokes that we both have been telling in the studio for decades.
I always said I learned more about making records from being a bartender than anything I learned in school. I didn't know it then, but I was learning a lot about how to produce records while doing that. Paul loved coming to Memphis, but he always kind of, he'd say it out loud. He's like, you people are crazy down here. And that wasn't an insult. That was we always took it as a compliment. He was always kind of fascinated coming from New York City to the laid-back way we do things here. I think Paul had a real healthy respect and admiration because we wing it here, in Memphis. It's not a chart-driven thing. You either play the demo or you run through it a few times on the floor and we cut it. That's the way it works in Memphis. So I think that might have taken Paul some getting used to from the way he was used to working, where it was very well rehearsed and thought out and the arrangements were made. The sessions back then were typically 10 to 12-hour days. He used to grumble at us because he'd want to start earlier in the morning, and we were just like, no. But he was always there first, and he would usually go out to the piano, and I'd come in and he'd just be playing. He liked the alone time to where he could just play piano by himself in the room before anybody else got there. And we'd always find him a New York Times. He needed a New York Times and have his coffee, in the morning. So that was all part of his ritual. Another thing about Paul is he's very much so a music historian. So I would venture to say, starting off, he may have had more knowledge and detail of Memphis music history than maybe I did myself. Paul and I always had that back and forth too. I learned a lot from him from that. And it would, I'm a historian too. I love learning stories and telling stories, but he was very well read about it, and he has a massive vinyl record collection too. So he was very much not just reading about it, but into the music, and he knew the things that he loved. It's kind of interesting if you follow the history of us working together. You know, I started as the engineer. I believe Hampton was still mixing his records, so I was just the engineer, and then eventually I was the co-producer and the recording engineer, and eventually toward the end he brought projects that he had been working on in other places for me to mix together. So we always considered it working together. I never remember an instance where, you know, I had to cross my arms and go, no, I'm not doing that because I'm the producer, or, you know, you have to do what I say. It was never anything close to that. And he was open-minded to trying things.
Last weekend, Saturday morning, I was headed up to Harlem to our warehouse space. The taxi driver was this young guy in his 20s, I'd say. He spotted my guitar and he starts asking questions. Hey, you make records? I said, yeah, that's what we do. He said, really? You make a living doing that? I said, well, we try anyway. So he looks again in the rear view at the guitar and he says, hey, do you make instrumentals? I said, yeah, we do instrumentals, but we do songs with vocals too. So he goes, no, I mean you play instruments, like guitar, piano. Because I know a couple people who make music and they use a computer. They don't really play any instruments. I said, yeah, well, we do it with instruments. But we do use computers too. But the computers are only to make the instruments and voices and the songs sound a little bit better. He says, well, that's pretty awesome that you do it the old way.
Let me just hear you talk, Paul.
All right, how's it sound?
Good.
Sound okay? All right.
Yeah, so maybe kind of rehash a little what you said, that this could get intercut into what we just did.
When I first came to New York City, one of the first jobs that I ever did was work as a cab driver for 2 years. That's when I was in grad school going to NYU, and I really didn't have the time to put in a 9-to-5 job. So I was driving a cab. I thought it would be more interesting to drive a cab than wait on tables, so that was basically my logic. So this neighborhood is called Long Island City, and it's the first neighborhood on this side of the East River. Manhattan's over there, we're on this side of the East River, and that's the Queensboro Bridge up there, 59th Street Bridge. And this neighborhood, like 30, 40 years ago, was kind of an industrial kind of wasteland of small industries, mechanical assembly shops. This area of Long Island City and Astoria, they were kind of the taxi cab dispatch centers of entire Manhattan. Everybody swapped their cabs over here and stored them in garages here. After I got inside and checked it out the first time, I go, whoa, wait a minute. This is a taxi garage. This is an abandoned taxi garage. This was a dispatch station. They all kind of look the same. There's a dispatcher's office that's glassed in. There's a huge space for the cars. There's pipes in the floor for gas tanks. It struck me after we were halfway through these sessions that I've kind of gone full circle from actually being a cab driver to now doing a music video in a cab dispatch center. This neighborhood where we are now, and you can sort of tell it's still pretty run down. 5 years from now, after we cut this video, this place won't exist anymore. It'll be gone. This will be the last photographic images of it. There'll be a 40-story condo right here.
One of our priorities was to have a really trashy looking rundown place that kind of reflects a little bit of the sound. You hear the band, you go, oh yeah, they sound kind of rough and ready, and probably should be playing in a warehouse or a garage. We just looked around and all of a sudden stumbled on this place, and the landlord was like, sure, come on in, do a music video. So, all right, we'll see how it goes. It is pretty funky. I mean, the bathrooms don't work. We had to bring in our own garbage pails. This is the first time Radiation Records has ever rented a porta potty. And I want you to say that was a great milestone for our record company, and I'd like to thank all the little people for making that happen.
First time, of course, that I worked with him, I didn't know what to expect. And sometimes when you haven't heard of someone, you're a little bit, because you don't know. But when I heard him, I was blown away. This guy can sing and he can write. He can really run the gamut with what he does. He's got like this whole bag of tricks. Most musicians, they kind of stay in their lane. His lane is like the freeway going there and back. The song called Don't Get Me Started. And it's just like this really cool, like a British invasion kind of soul rock blues. Jackie Johnson and I used to do all his background vocals. And I just remember the background vocals, don't get me started. When Jackie and I would sing that, oh God, it was so much fun to sing. And he's just a great lyricist. Like he can really set the mood. But I love that song.
We never talk anymore. You don't return my calls. Then I hear your name. They say she's got another man. Oh, the race grabs a hold of my soul. Oh, don't get me started. No, don't get me started. Oh, 'cause it just won't stop. Oh, no, won't stop. No. I'll be coming on.
It's one of those cliched artist responses when they're asked about listening to their own material. They always say, oh, I never go back and listen to my own records. I never go look at my old paintings. I've moved on from that. The muse is someplace else, so I never listen to my old stuff. That response is largely BS. Most artists do go back and listen to their old work. And there's one real good reason why. Because they want to hear what they did wrong. They want to correct their mistakes when they start doing another record. You always want to get better. And one of the best ways to do it is to listen to your old stuff and go, I messed up there. It's going to be better next time.
I've been playing with Paul probably 15 years maybe, I guess. But I've known him for probably close to 30 years now.
I had the Van Dorens on the road all the time, playing the same circuit of clubs and bars that Too Tall Paul's band was playing. Paulie was a member of the Frantic Flat Tops, a really strong original rockabilly outfit from Rochester, New York. They'd come and see us and hang, and we'd go and see them and hang. And the two bands became partners almost, a running gang of roots rock aficionado musicians. Eventually, we toured the Midwest with the Flat Tops through Chicago, Detroit, into Canada. It was an education. Long van rides, seedy hotels, strange club personalities. I was always a big fan of Paulie's rockabilly chops. We stayed tight over the years, and I always had it in the back of my mind that sometime Paulie and I were going to play together in the same band. And sure enough, he eventually became part of the Van Dorens. And for these garage sessions, we flew him up from Austin. There was no doubter. He definitely had to be part of it.
I get up to New York City a couple times a year, and every time we come up, we hang out with Paul. We went out to dinner in January in New York City. I talked to James and Paul about the video they did, just the two of them. And I said, hey, Paul, if you want to get the three of us to do it, man, just give me a call. I'll come up anytime. And about a month later, sure enough, he texted me and explained the project, and I told him, I'm down, I'm in.
Once you played several years in the same city, working on your performance skills and growing an audience, the time eventually comes where you need to expand your promotional boundaries, get out there and promote the band more broadly, go on the road. And we did. It used to be the essential promotional publicity step after you released your first commercial recording, your first album. Although I don't know if it is anymore. These days it seems like web clicks are more important than being able to competently get on a stage and perform a song before a live audience. After 25 plus years, on and off the road, performing at clubs, bars, festivals, I think I can propose with some authority that there are very few professional paths you can take in life that will impact your thoughts and your character more than being a professional musician on the road for a prolonged length of time. It's a never-ending odyssey of weirdness. Much of that life is not pleasant. It's 24 little incivilities every single day. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Thousands of sets of repetitive live music, thousands of bad hotels, thousands of hours in clunky vans traveling from city to city, a bad stage sound system at most every venue, club managers of questionable sanity. It's sound checks being canceled because the engineer decided not to show up that afternoon. It's setting up and breaking down equipment so often you can do it in your sleep. It's tonight's ball game playing on a giant flat screen over the bar while you're performing. It's bad food as a way of life, personal hygiene as an afterthought. It's musicians with periodic teenage mood problems, band managers who steal from the band, record companies that fail to honor agreements to cover road expenses, hours trying to get club agents on the phone. The book is yet to be written that captures the futility and the soul crush of being a professional musician on the road. You push ahead, you keep traveling, you keep playing live. Well, it's largely because you love the idea of music. But the effect, the final result, is that you hate the road. But you're not supposed to say that publicly. But that hate is not quite as large as the self-hate you feel when you're sitting at home and not playing out live at all.
When my wife went home to her mother, boys, I turned it up a notch. When my wife went home to her mother, boys, I turned it up a notch. 7 days of living on nothing but FRITOS, barbecue, and scotch. They say this stuff will kill you, but you know that's a crock. Well, they say this stuff will kill you, you know that's a crock. Ain't no medicine works better than FRITOS, barbecue, and scotch.
It's changed now, but most kids for several generations were raised on rock music. I was too. When I was in my teens, I was listening far and wide, and I found out that the best elements of rock music, like rhythm and propulsion and aggression and clever wordplay, they were all done earlier and often done better by blues musicians. Quite a bit of rock music, which I do love, nonetheless is not particularly good, usually because the lyrics are pretty lousy, or the rhythm section hasn't quite figured out how to swing yet. But blues records are almost never bad. Even when the record is mediocre, blues still has an undeniable power. It has an element of the raw and the real that can't really be explained. The first music I became obsessed with as a kid was rural country blues, folk acoustic blues, the kind of music that came out of the Deep South in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. Played solo on acoustic guitars, often played with finger picks, often played with open tunings. I would scour the music stores every week for records by people like Reverend Gary Davis and Blind Arthur Blake and Mississippi John Hurt and Skip James, and contemporary guys who were sort of the next generation of people in the 60s, folkies, people like John Fahey and Leo Kottke, and people like that. Jorma Kaukonen was another one. I used to listen to their records meticulously and try to figure out what they were doing. The guys who were playing it usually played with finger picks, and the reason they did that was because they were playing solo and they were playing parties and they were playing bars and they were playing barbecues. And there was no amplification. There wasn't even guitar pickups hadn't been invented yet. They wanted it as loud as possible, so they would put on finger picks, and it makes the guitar, makes it loud, makes it project. The other thing they did was that they used open tunings, which means the guitar, when you strike it, when you're not chording it, you're not fretting it, it actually plays a chord. Right now, I'm playing an open D, which is probably the most common open tuning. It's used by slide guitar players, Robert Johnson, Elmore James, Dwayne Allman. You can only do so many things with a standard tuned guitar because you only have so much stretch on your fingers. Figuring out open tunings when you're young is a pretty big thing because once you figure out the open tuning, all of a sudden a whole new world opens up to you. You can play things like... In other words, you can play the bass, you can play the rhythm, and you can play the lead on the same guitar, which makes it a fuller sound. It makes people want to dance. If you start at the roots beginning of things like that, country blues, and you really get it into your system, eventually your head starts to spin with ideas that are similar to that, and it takes you into other related, similar forms, like electric blues. As it turns out, the transition from finger-picked folk blues on an acoustic guitar to more electric blues with a flat pick, that transition's really easy for the ear, and that transition mimics what happened in the music world from the 1940s to the 1950s and early 60s, when guitar pickups and tube amps were invented. The guitar became a very different instrument. One, yeah, it's louder, but more importantly, you hear more overtones in the guitar, the sustain is longer, you get more overdrive on the sound, that is, it's more dirty, which makes it a whole different kind of instrument, a whole different kind of sound. One player who sort of encapsulated that whole transition from folk blues to electric blues, the guy who was kind of a missing link in that whole transition, was Lightnin Hopkins. Lightnin Hopkins was from Texas. He did most of his early work in Houston. And he played most of his early records were on acoustic guitar, and he flat picked on an acoustic guitar. But then midway through his career, the pickups and the amps were developed. So he would start to play that very same country blues on an electrified guitar, an amplified guitar. Very often his guitars had, like this one, it had a sound hole pickup mounted into an old acoustic guitar. So you get a very transitional sound between folk blues and electric blues. You can hear it. You can hear it sounds like an acoustic guitar, but it sounds more like an electric guitar. And he mastered that, and he's probably one of the most influential electric guitar players, blues players certainly, ever. I mean, he's right up there with B.B. King and T-Bone Walker. Everybody listened to him and everybody said, oh, he's doing something different. And you couldn't really call him a folk player and you couldn't really call him an electric player. He was somewhere in between. Lightnin Hopkins was probably one of the best blues ballad singers who ever lived. He's hypnotic and dark. But he also did upbeat numbers, and that's where his guitar really shined through. He could swing a room just alone with the guitar, and so many guitar players listen to it and go, wow, that is cool, I want to do that. So eventually I started leaning into that Lightnin Hopkins thing and started playing things like Hopkins. A little Texas stuff in there from Freddie King, Stevie Ray Vaughan, maybe a little Paul Mark in there too. So after 10, 12, 15 years of working out guitar styles and listening to hundreds of players, your mind starts to move off into its own circle, into its own world. It's a songwriting world. So without even knowing it, you start stealing from the old and building something new. Some kind of something that sounds a little bit different. When I wrote this song, it was fairly early on, and I was clearly borrowing from like Buddy Guy and B.B. King and Texas blues, but I knew I needed to mix it up in a kind of way that made it a little bit different. So I changed it from a 12-bar format to a 16-bar format. I used a lot of stop and go cadence right in every verse. And I also played simultaneously rhythm guitar and lead guitar, which gives it a very dynamic kind of feel. Then you try to add an ironic, interesting lyric that catches people's ear. And after all that, you do a demo of the song, you bring it to the studio, and you play it for your musician mates, and you see what they can do with it. Before you know it, you got something live and organic. It's like...
You all right, Joseph? I think this camera guy screwed it up, though. We got to do it again.
Blame the camera.
I went to some shitty studio in the Lower East Side, and there was Paul. That's how I met him. I've always been playing piano, so keys have always been my main bag, and you know, who doesn't love the sound of the Hammond? What I really loved about it was that I was able to play gigs with bands, and the Hammond would really cut through in a way that a piano can't. Plus, it's just like the butteriest, most soulful sound I think there ever was. Who knows if it's the wood, the vibrations, or something else, but there's something that comes out of an actual Hammond organ that is basically impossible to replicate.
I always said that if I had to start all over again, I'd be a B3 player. Hands down, B3. The Van Dorens began as a trio, but it wasn't exactly by choice. It was more because in the 1980s and 90s, New York City had a thing called the cabaret law. Look it up. The cabaret law restricted the number of musicians on most small club stages to 3, which meant if you wanted to work a lot, you essentially had to be a trio. It was only when we started going on the road away from the city that we began to carry an organ player. And I pretty much knew all along that we'd eventually have a 4th piece. Not a sax player, not a harmonica, not a second guitar, but a Hammond B3. Dan brings not only that B3 soul sound, but he also adds a more adventurous, almost bebop tonality to our tracks. And Dan, he's also an attorney, of all things. And had I known that I'd be performing for years alongside a lawyer, I would have broken the law a lot more often.
I think it's reflective of Paul's vision, his sort of aesthetic and his ethic. There's a New Yorkness, if that's a phrase, to his music. There's a sort of industrial, almost sometimes post-apocalyptic way that he writes songs, the way that he thinks about things. His songs lyrically are brilliant. If you really listen to the lyrics, he's making a lot of different kinds of social and political commentary. I think it's true of all great American roots music, mostly from the 20th century. It's sort of this amalgamation of styles. It's the same reason why, you know, you have, you know, R&B built upon swing and soul and Motown. You know, there's a continuity to it, but it always sounds good, mostly because it's got that blues foundation. To me, when you have a blues foundation, it's really hard to go wrong. It always has a timelessness to it, always has an earthiness to it, very hard to turn away from.
left the keys on the table, left my so-called friends behind, until I night just shoot me. Where I'm headed, those fools will never find. And there's just one thing you must do, yeah. You must go to. Oh, come on, get in the car. It's a time without reason, Mister, I'm leaving. Too much, too much, too much talk, and not enough. There's an island somewhere where only two could share. No one, no one, no one. Someday when it's over, when it's all been washed away, they've been writing books about it, how the smart ones got up and walked away. And there's just one thing you must do, you must come to. Oh, you got to go with me. That's just one thing you must do. Oh, honey, you must come. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, baby. Come on, darling. There's just one thing you must do. Oh, honey, you must come.
Over the years, I've recorded and performed with so many musicians, some of which were studio musicians. And it was always a great pleasure to collaborate with them, fresh minds and fresh input. One of those people I've collaborated so many times with is Susan Marshall, a great background singer, great singer in her own right, recording artist. And I think she's recorded maybe 20 plus different songs with Paul Mark and the Van Dorens as a background vocalist. Very creative person, very experienced, and she's a very strong personality too. Susan and I very quickly over the years established a routine where I would show up at the studio and sing for Susan the background parts that I had come up with for the songs that I'd written. And I'd sing them for them. And then she'd look at me and she'd go, "Well, that's a really good idea, Paul, but how about if we try this?" And so I would sit back and listen to her sing this spontaneous arrangement of the background vocals, which was usually better than mine. And so when we eventually recorded the song, we would almost invariably use her arrangement.
When you're doing background vocals, sometimes people come in and they're very rigid and they have a very specific thing of exactly how they want their background vocals for their project. And then some people come in and they have no clue. They're really looking to you to come up with all the parts. So with Paul, when you're working, this is my opinion, it's controlled chaos. He'll get people that he really likes, and I know he's just thinking, what if I put so-and-so with this and then that? And I give him one little idea, like he's like a mad scientist in his head, and he's very collaborative. So he does have specific ideas that he wants to try, He just gives you enough leeway, and that made it creatively fun. Paul asked me to put some girls together to sing, and so got Reba Russell, my good pal Reba Russell, and Stephanie Bolton, my other good friend Stephanie. Paul had this certain vibe he was trying to get, where he just wanted to invite a bunch of people over. We're all gonna drink beer and eat and have a lot of fun and laugh. He wanted people dancing and eating, and it was so much fun. We just were cutting up, and it was just like completely right up our alley. We loved it.
The other night, I was looking around, I was out of sight. Then I looked for a horse, I saw me a mule. I looked for a cow, and I saw me a few. She said, now don't you tell Henry. Don't you tell Henry. Yeah, don't you tell Henry. Don't you tell Henry. Don't you tell Henry. Apple's got your fly.
So there's this old cliche that been quoted by generations of sophomores that says, good artists copy, but great artists steal. It's usually here attributed to like Picasso or Stravinsky or Faulkner. I doubt any of them said it. There's another quote that's probably a little more meaningful, and it has been attributed to Picasso, but it might be apocryphal as well. Anyway, the quote is, art critics talk about theory, but artists talk about turpentine. So let's talk a little bit about songwriting turpentine. A number of years ago, 10 or more years ago, I set out to write a song that was going to showcase my drummer, Too Tall Paulie's skills. So I set out and wrote this song called Car Keys. So the first thing I needed was an up-tempo song, and who better to take an up-tempo rhythm from than Chuck Berry, because he basically defined that stuff in the early years of rock and roll. Stuff like...
Long distance information, give me Memphis, Tennessee.
That's the Memphis beat from Chuck Berry. Of course, it's just an old blues rhythm that's used in dozens, hundreds of songs that Chuck Berry just took and sped up. He basically stole it from them. That's basically Jimmy Reed.
Bright light, big city, going to my baby's head. Whoa, bright light.
So that's Jimmy Reed, and Chuck Berry just took it from there. The next thing was to write a lyric to tell a story in the song. Most rock and roll songs are usually about boy and girl fall in and out of love. That's trope number one. Trope number two is rebellious, virile male telling you about how virile and strong and rebellious he is and how irresistible he is. That second trope, the swaggering, rebellious male, that's got quite a bit of mileage in the history of hip-hop music. So I decided to choose the second one, the rebellious male type thing, but rather than just tell the same old swaggering story, I flipped it on its head and said, well, let's have the swaggering, rebellious male finally get his comeuppance from a righteous, smart, strong woman who puts him in his place. Now that's kind of a funny story, and something that's a little bit more contemporary, a little bit more new. The important thing was to give it a kind of rapid-fire machine gun delivery lyrical approach, which adds to the interest and the humor of the song. I was very aware of a great garage rock song called Cadillac Man, recorded by a band called the Jesters. They were a bunch of college kids from the Memphis area. They recorded Cadillac Man at Sam Phillips Recording Services, which is the studio Sam Phillips built after he left Sun. The record was recorded, engineered by his son, Knox Phillips. Another weird twist to that song was that the piano player and the vocalist on the track was the legendary session dude when he was really young. His name is Jim Dickinson. Anybody in the music industry knew Jim Dickinson because he played remarkably on the Rolling Stones records, Sticky Fingers. He played piano on Wild Horses, among other things. So I'd come up with a rhythm, a theme, an idea, a lyric, a cadence, The only thing I still needed was a hook. So finding a hook is actually one of the harder things to do in songwriting. I had a song in my head that I had heard as a kid. It's a song by a guy named Timmy Shaw, who also went by the name of Jake Hammonds. And he wrote a song called Gonna Send You Back to Georgia. That song was famously covered by the Animals, Eric Burdon, Chaz Chandler, Alan Price, the British Invasion Band. They had a hit with it, but they changed the name. And they called their version of the song Gonna Send You Back to Walker. Has a great vocal hook in it. It goes like this. Sing-along hook, your ear immediately grabs it and you sing along with it. So there's one more piece of constructive information for this song, Car Keys. There's a song by Hound Dog Taylor that was released in the 1970s on Alligator Records, and it's called Gimme Back My Wig. It's a really funny song, it's really raucous. It has a chorus that goes something like this. Gimme back my wig. It was a little different, but I clearly subliminally took that phrase and turned "Give Me Back My Wig" into "Give Me Back My Car Keys." By the way, Hound Dog Taylor himself took the lyrics of that song basically from a New Orleans songwriting trope about women who have no hair, which is pretty funny and very New Orleans. But the most famous version of that song is by Professor Longhair. It's called Bald Head. So anyway, that's how the song Car Keys came about.
Are you cool with another take, Joseph? 1 minute? You okay? Okay. Take 2. Car Keys.
So if there are any sophomores out there listening in, please send in your test results and let us know whether Paul is an artist who copies or an artist who steals.
All right, take 2.
She was ticking like a time bomb, acting out like she was done.
That's right.
It's like a marathon. It's like a marathon.
Cool.
Joseph, you get that? You're supposed to say ready when you are, CD.
When young people ask me about going into the studio business, I would tell them, I'm not trying to scare you, but the only people that should be in this class is if no one can talk you out of it. Because if you think this is going to be some glamorous job and you're going to make the next hit and you're going to be a millionaire and everybody's going to know your name and you're going to change recording history, the likelihood of that happening is very small. When you go to the time and care and expense that Paul's gone through to make all these records through the years, he's never cheaped out, as I would say. He again would cast the characters. He wanted the best studios and the best equipment and the best engineers and the producers and best musicians. So in that light, you're wondering, like, well, why didn't he blow up or become a giant, huge thing? And some of it is just luck. That the fact that it happens to some people that are maybe even less talented, or for whatever reason, you never really know that magic thing. You can do everything right and be extremely talented, and still only a relative handful of people will hear your music. It's completely different these days because music has been so devalued. You can get 1 million streams, and it's adds up to nothing. Paul has been through all that. If you think about the time period, he's been through way before the digital download era has come along, and that's what's mainly Spotify and YouTube and all those things. Although they're you may be able to reach a lot more ears, you just basically don't get paid. So that's a tough question. It's a real tough question. Because these records are strong, and his songs are strong, and his performance ability is strong. So,
all right, so we're going to try this. Hey, Joseph, I think we're just going to try it and go right. We're not going to do a trial because we were hitting it pretty well in rehearsal. Okay? And I have a guitar, but I'm not going to play guitar at all. Okay? So I think we started out this thing asking about why artists keep on creating. Why do they keep moving forward? Why do they push ahead in the face of the obvious futilities? Why does the painter keep painting? Why does the songwriter keep writing songs? No, it's not craving for recognition or wealth or attention. It's something quite different than that. So for the past 200 years or so, since the advent of the Industrial Revolution and the rise of the middle class, the primary reason why creative, perceptive people are driven towards the arts is, in a word, alienation. It's dissatisfaction and disappointment with the vulgarities and crudeness of day-to-day society and its mundane, dull preoccupations. It's disgust with technology and the short-sightedness of technologists who impose themselves upon our daily lives and our daily routines. And it's sadness at the twisted, persistent preoccupation with profits and short-term capital. At a young age, you become disenchanted and you gradually become more and more detached from all that. That world drives artists and creative people away, and it pushes them towards their own orbit, towards their own valence, where they can create things and live in a world that might be a little bit more satisfactory, one that's a more rational existence. And no, that's not escapism, that's not elitism. It's more the practical assembly of a rational space that you can live in. And you become preoccupied, almost obsessed with the work you're creating in that space. And as you move forward, it's the work, the thing you're building, it's the quality of the work that keeps you going forward.
Hey, I live in a prison of wrong. With bed made of desert sand. I sleep in that desert in the sky so cold. The world you crave is a world you can't hold. Hey, I sleep neath the heavens so cold. Every winter has its summer. Every darkness leads to day. But I got a raging emptiness that pulls like a ball and chain. And I ride down a highway alone. Hey. No signs but the light of the moon. I ride down a highway that whistles and moans. I know destination unknown. Yeah, I ride down a highway alone. Hey, I live in a prison no one.
The irony that you eventually figure out is that most works that expose the mystery and depth of the day-to-day world, they're most often created by people who have largely stepped away from that world. For me, and maybe some others, what you figure out in a roundabout way is that the best reason for pushing ahead, well, it's interest. Interest is a private, solid thing. It's uncorruptible. It sustains you. It's better than much of what the world has to offer otherwise. And if you're lucky, you figure out early what it is you're really, truly interested in. Then you block out the distractions, you disregard the noise, you go after that interesting thing. And the years fly by. It's a slim reward, but the knowledge that comes to you piecemeal over the years, that's what keeps you going, even though that knowledge and awareness is never really complete. And that's the comic, tragic contradiction at the core of it all. Kind of funny, actually.
Late summer crossing, red right return. Each August nougat is a lesson never learned. Salt in your hair, wind in our wounds. Sailors go silent to watery tones. To err is human, to err again is divine. Songs from a lifeboat said you'd always be mine. Swear I'll never repeat it, maybe never isn't true. Jamestown Ferry, Deep Harbor Moon. Please say you once needed me.